What's going on, everybody? This is Lars, Director of Lacrosse Operations at Harvard Men's Lacrosse, at Sidewall Jedi, on Instagram and Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff, and also assistant coach and equipment manager for the Boston Cannons. Today is our next little one clip, one drill for Harvard Men's Lacrosse, and today I wanted to talk about something that is it's not something that you hear people talk about too much, or let me rephrase that. It's not something you hear people discuss at length very often, but I've probably heard something about it in every practice I've ever been to for any team or any clinic or any club I've ever had anything to do with. And so I wanted to dive into talking about quick release because it's very specific to me and it's very specific to stick stringing. But not just that. Obviously, it has a lot to do with coaching in general. And I don't know if, especially younger coaches and coaches, parents who are getting involved in youth coaching and high school coaches, sometimes they don't know all of the ins and outs of it and everything that comes into it. So that's why I wanted to kind of dive in. So it's like this is a quick but very in-depth look at what quick release is. And so the official title of what we're trying to do today is quick release is a skill, not a pocket. Now, that's kind of like a clickbaity description because the pocket certainly has something to do with it, but I'll explain why it has so much more to do with your hands and your skill and what you can accomplish as a player. So literally, what quick release is how long, for wherever you are with the ball in your stick, how long it takes you to throw or shoot once your brain makes the decision to do so. Now that can be a little bit different for passing and for shooting because of obviously varying circumstances, but generally speaking, For passing, it has more to do with the hands and your mechanics, like the upper body mechanics of what you're doing. And then for shooting, that can add in much more of like the full body, the legs piece. Depends a little bit situationally whether or not if I've got the ball and I'm getting ready to shoot. If I'm got the ball and I'm trying to shoot off a dodge, or if I'm trying to shoot quickly off of a catch. It also depends on off the catch whether or not I'm inside and I'm just trying to quick stick the ball and get out of my stick as quick as I can, or I'm catching the ball and trying to shoot from 15 or 16 yards. For the legs, just while the shooting piece is here, or while I'm on the shooting piece, you got to make sure that you're thinking about like what. Make sure you're thinking about if this is, if you're a player and you're watching this, you're thinking about yourself, or if you're a coach and you're looking at your players, think about, talking to your players about setting things up, like doing everything you possibly can with your legs to make sure that you are ready to shoot and you have as little to do as possible once you get the opportunity to do so. You don't want to, one of the big things that slows up, and I'll touch upon this a little bit later as well, one of the things that adds to release timing, and not having a quick release is once, a player is, ready to shoot, then he has to start doing all of the steps and doing everything with his feet and his body in order to put himself in a position to take that shot. And that might be half a second, 2 seconds, but everything that you can do preemptively to prepare yourself to be in a position to shoot before it's time, then it's going to take a lot less time. And again, we're talking about fractions of a second to get a shot off. For the younger levels, the game moves a little bit slower. Players aren't as fast, they aren't as athletic or as agile, and typically, there's much more of a disparity in stick skills across the board for young players. But as players get older and older and start playing at higher and higher levels, the skill increases across the board. Typically, size and athleticism increases across the board. So, because players are bigger, stronger, and faster once they get to college and the professional level, the amount of time that they have in order to make decisions gets a lot smaller. No, that, if you're making it, if you've made it to be able to play in the professional level, you're obviously extremely proficient in a number of different things. But you got to be good at some things. You don't necessarily have to be as great as others, but you have to be good enough to be able to make sure that you can stay onto the field. College pros. But there are guys who have extremely quick releases, and there are guys that don't. And typically, in this situation, for guys that don't have an extremely quick release, obviously they're typically better at other things that makes up for it. To talk about pockets, certain pockets will help, and certain pockets will hurt. But above all, skill, like literally the skill of someone's hands, is more important than what kind of stick. What stick they are using. And I say that specifically because skill trumps whatever kind of stick you're using. And there's four guys that actually have come up in either talks with One Clip One Drill, with Harvard Men's Lacrosse, or other things that I've done on my own platforms. I do some stick stringing videos that I do for that, and some live videos and things. Four guys that I've talked about recently who are perfect examples of being over-skilled for what they are using are like Gary Gate, Casey Powell, John Grant Jr., and Lyle Thompson. Here are four guys that are truly like exceptional amongst the exceptional. And they have put themselves in a position that there's so much muscle memory, and they've practiced to a degree, and obviously they've gotten comfortable playing at such an extremely high level. And also, I will say, and I'll get into this a little later as well, those four guys have been extremely successful in both the indoor and outdoor professional leagues. They're so good, it doesn't matter what they use, partially because they've been just playing for so long. But I think it's also like these are four guys. Like Lyle is the youngest of all this group. I mean, like Junior is still playing and still crushing it at a professional level into his 40s. I'm not sure. I think Casey probably, when he retired from professional lost, he was in his late 30s. Gary is the same thing. So Lyle's the young one. Like, I don't know if Lyle's 30 yet, but Lyle's been playing since probably, like, Lyle's had a stick in his hand since before he could walk. Lyle has had such a tremendously positive effect on the lacrosse community, but also, like, he has an incredible influence, and he's incredibly important to the Native American community and Native American lacrosse. And more power to him. I wish he could do more. I'm not going to say he isn't doing enough. He's definitely doing a lot. But I wish he could have more of an impact on all of the lacrosse communities. But those four guys in particular, like, they are incredible because they have learned to play multiple different styles. So not only they have multiple different styles, like styles of lacrosse, the big picture is the indoor-outdoor piece, but for playing multiple different styles of lacrosse, it's important sometimes to be able to use a different kind of stick. You're probably going to use something. Some people might understand this. Some people might understand how I hate using the word whip, and I'm going to touch upon that in a second. Typically, playing in the outdoor game, you're going to use a little bit more whip in your stick, and basically it's going to make the stick. It's not going to be as easy to throw at that stick. For the outdoor game as opposed to the indoor game. The indoor game is much more, it's more physical in the indoor game. You have to be more skillful. You have to be able to get the ball out of your stick quicker because it's the playing space is smaller. And because of it being more physical and there's more physical stuff going on, you have to be able to get the ball out of your stick as quickly as possible. So those four guys, they have developed skill sets to be able to use whatever they need, or they can use anything, because of what they've done indoor, it affects how that they can play outdoor. So while they might use a different stick for both two games, they have developed the mechanics and the understanding of how to literally get the ball out of your stick as quickly as possible. So I mentioned a second ago, like talking about whip. I hate the word. It's very ambiguous. It's very subjective. If you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different answers, and most likely none of them are wrong. And that's what I don't like about it, is that everyone has their own idea of what it is, and then also nobody knows what it is. So effectively for this conversation, I'm going to describe it as how easy or difficult it is to throw with a stick. If a stick has a lot of whip, and again, this is for this conversation, it means that it's very difficult to throw with. If this stick does not have a lot of whip, it is much easier to throw with. And the examples are, if you're throwing a stick straight into the ground, if a guy's using a stick that he doesn't know how to use, or it has a lot of whip, and he's trying to throw a ball 20 yards and he's putting it at his feet, that stick has a lot of whip for this definition. If that same guy then puts that stick down and picks up a old school girl stick that is purely flat, it's literally a pie plate, and he goes to throw and the ball goes straight up, that is the opposite. That one has no whip at all whatsoever. And then so everyone kind of understands this, or gets a little bit better of an idea. There's multiple different ways that whip can be derived. It can be because there is effectively hook, or there's much more rounded. The pocket is more rounded. Now, I would not say that this stick has a lot of hook, but I would say like this stick is a good example of more of a kind of a rounded pocket, whereas something like this. You can get whip. You cannot have hook in your stick. I hear a lot of Canadian and box players talking about a hook stick. That's what I just showed you. That's just so you understand the pocket shapes. And this is something that's a little bit more of a flat ramp and a flat release. But this stick also has a little bit more aggressive of a channel, and so you can get whip derived from channel. So that's another reason why it's such an ambiguous word, and people have different ideas of what it means, because there's different ways to get it. So now, how do we make adjustments? Or how do we help quick release? How do we, what things help quick release? What things hurt quick release? So to have, if you've got a stick that makes it, like you said, it has whip and it's not as easy to throw with as you like, or things are throwing down, generally you want to try and loosen the shooting strings, or make the pocket a little shallower. That will generally make it so that the ball has an easier time of coming out of it. From a mechanic standpoint, it's very important to make sure that I am holding my stick somewhere that I don't have to take extra cradles. And some of this is just being more comfortable and playing and getting experience. But if I'm always playing and I've got my stick down by my hips, and I realize I've got to throw and I've got to bring my stick up to get the ball to come out of it, that's going to take longer than if I'm playing and living in a world where I'm actually like running around with my stick ready to throw. So in the women's game, they call it triple threat. Some men's coaches do. I've dubbed it as being ever ready. That obviously hasn't caught on, but it's staying somewhere. If you ever watch box games, you see a lot of those guys. They're running around, and like when they have the ball in their stick, like if they're running up the field, and they're trying to get away from somebody. They're going to be cradling. They're going to have their hands down by their hips. The stick is kind of like 3/4. But if they're getting ready to throw, they're going to keep the stick up here, and they're looking. They're keeping the ball here, and when it's time to throw, they don't cradle before they have to throw. So, like, mechanics play a huge part in getting the ball out of the stick quickly. The things that can hurt quick release from a pocket standpoint, if just like I showed you in this picture, if the channel is too aggressive, and when the ball is trying to come out of the stick, and the ball gets caught, even if there's no shooters, you can have you can have no shooters in a stick and have a channel like that's super aggressive and super tight, and it just holds onto the ball too much when the ball's coming its way out. That's going to hurt quick release. That doesn't mean I know this sounds contradictory. You can still have a stick with a super aggressive channel that you can get the ball out of the stick quickly enough, but then that's the player who has skill, who knows what to do to get the ball to come out quickly. Whereas I could give that same stick to a younger player who isn't as skilled, and they have to cradle a bunch of times and they have to do a whole lot. They're not going to be accurate with it. They're not going to be consistent with it. this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about skill is more important as far as being able to have a quick release. Another thing from a mechanic standpoint, what can hurt it, just like I talked about with what can help, is if you are a player that you're typically, keeping the ball someplace where you're not ready to throw, and all of a sudden you've got to, if I'm running around and I keep the ball here or my stick here with the ball in it, and then every time I want to throw, then I'm always bringing my hands up before I get it out, that's going to hurt quick release. If every time, even if I stay here, but every time I want to throw, I've got to cradle a bunch of times before I throw, you don't have a quick release. The ways to alleviate those two things, from the stringing or to try and help, different from the helping what specifically helps quick release, the way to make changes. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of having a well-strung stick and having a stick that is easy. Like I said, I don't use the word whip very often. I don't like it because people don't understand. I don't know what they mean by it. They typically, they don't know what my definition means. So I talk about having a stick that is easy to use. Easy is much easier for people to generally understand. And so I make sure that when I'm stringing sticks for whoever it is, professional players, indoor players, outdoor players, college players, youth players, high school players, I want to make sure that I can give them a stick that has a pocket that lets them carry where they want the ball. They let the ball sit where they want to when they carry, but also when they're ready to throw with it, the ball's going to come out of the stick easily enough. It's going to have hold. It's going to have, the release timing, which I prefer. Like, does it come out early or late? Does it come out high or does it come out low? How do we make adjustments to do that? Those are all things that are capable, that I am capable of doing when I'm putting together a pocket. But obviously, I don't want to. I want to almost give people sticks that are a little bit easier to throw with than they want, or than they need, because then you can always make adjustments to the shooting strings and the bottom string to make it a little bit, come out a little bit later. But I want to do my part to help make sure that people, one, aren't obviously throwing balls into the ground, but two, the easier it is to throw with a stick, the more likely are they have to have a quick release. Now, like I said, skill is very important with this piece. But that's about it. There's certainly more that I can discuss. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. But if you have any questions, please take a moment. Hit me up on Instagram. It's at Sidewall Jedi, all one word. You can go to my website, which is www.sidewalljedi.com. Or you can just send me an email to lars@sidewalljedi.com. Please, if you have any questions about any of this, if you think something different and you'd like to talk about this, I obviously want to talk about it. I want to learn. I want to know what other people have to say about it. I wrote my graduate school research paper on defining the term whip. I like talking about it. So please, any questions, please feel free to reach out, and see you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.